The following is now being recorded for training purposes, and by participating in this event, all attendees acknowledge their consent to this taping and agree for its later use. All recordings may be posted on MCOA's website as determined by MCOA staff. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. We haven't met in quite some time. This is Betsy Connell, the Assistant Director, and we're very happy to have with us today Carol Malone, Assistant Secretary from the Executive Office of Elder Affairs, and Becky Moriarty, our MCOA Board President, and David Stevens, our Director. And we also have joining us Lynn Feldman, who's the Director of Community Services at LifePath. And she's going to be sharing some ideas and some of the work that LifePath has been engaged in to reduce social isolation. On that topic, I wanted to share with everyone who's joined the call today that this morning we have posted the summary of the community conversations on the topic of social isolation and behavioral health on our coronavirus webpage under community conversations. I also wanted to share that we are going to continue this topic of behavioral health and social isolation for the community conversations in the month of December. Those are going to be scheduled by late tomorrow, and we'll be sending out a communication for those dates and times. There was a lot of great information that came out of those 5 meetings in November, and we're going to continue these, and we're going to add the information that we gather to the document that has been posted on our website. And at this point, I'd like to turn it over to our wonderful Executive Director, David Stevens, for some opening remarks. David.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for joining us at this particular event. It has been a while. It's been a little bit longer for me. I think the last time I was able to address you was at the fall conference, but prior to that was our August statewide meeting. And I was going in the next week for my knee replacement. For those who didn't hear during the conference, I recovered very nicely. I had a great replacement. I am scheduled for the other knee coming up right after the holidays, so I'll go back in for that one. I appreciate all that the staff, including Betsy and Sherry, did to keep the agency running, and I thank them publicly now again. You met in September. It was the last time we met as a group, so it has been a period of time since we've been all able to get together to have this type of a conversation, and we appreciate you joining us at this event. For those who did not or were unable to attend the fall conference for whatever reason, I want you to know that you still actually can register for it, and you can go then, and once you are registered, you can go and listen to all the workshops, all the TED Talks, all the plenary presentations. They are online for those who registered for the conference. And what's great about that is that you might have been in a session where there were 2 or 3 workshops you wanted to go to. You now can circle back and attend that other workshop. I recognize most of you are stretched for time, but every now and then you might have an hour here or an hour there, and you can go back and look at the things you might have missed or things that you want to listen to again. I appreciate all the hard work that members, advisory council, board members, our friends from Elder Affairs did to put that event on. I thought it was a tremendous success, given the fact that it was a 5-day virtual conference with many moving parts. I single out Kathy Bowler, Kelly, Lynn, for all the work they did to transform our usual 3-day experience into a 5-day, half-day experience. I appreciate everybody who attended and participated, the people who presented workshops, and our vendors who were there. I thought it was a very good, successful event. Becky and I just came from a planning meeting that is beginning to look out what 2021 will look like, and we'll be making decisions about that in the nearer term future. If those who remember, we were what was on in terms of a budgetary issue. we were on what was called continuing resolutions. And we were extremely fortunate that the governor kept the formula rate at $12 per elder. And we want to send thank you notes to the administration to say thank you for that $12. This is significant. He helped us get it, and we've been able to maintain it now for 3 fiscal years. The legislature did concur, but our budgets were delayed. We usually have this wrapped up by July 1st, but we were on what I mentioned, continuing resolutions, or CRs, which are month to month for the last several months. And in October, during the conference, the governor decided to move forward on it. He resubmitted his budget, which restated $12 per elder. And then the House followed about a week later and kept the number at $12 per elder and put in to fully fund the SIG program. And then the Senate took it up and did the same thing. So in both the Senate and the House versions, it's fully funding the line item at $17 million. And this is significant, and you need to be thanking your representatives and your senators and the administration, because this is an extraordinarily difficult time. Just because we got level funding, which is what we asked for, doesn't mean that other line items weren't cut significantly. There is a projection of around now 10 to 15% of the budget we're going to have to find the revenues for. They're going to dip a little bit into rainy day funds. They're hoping a little bit on federal supplement coming in the next 60, 120 days. So we will take it day by day. But at this point in time, as you have been made aware, the $12 for formula grant seems to be a lock. We're figuring out what the SIG amount will be and how those will happen. I'll talk about that in a minute. But I think that we need to thank all of the players involved in this, because this was a difficult year and councils on aging were made a priority. Having said that, and where we're going with this, the other piece that we really need to thank the administration for, and I was able to say it in August, and I just want to remind everybody, back in the 80s when I started this job, 1980, I started in the field. You were allowed to carry over that first set of years of formula grant money. And I remember doing some annual reports and working with some councils on aging at that point in time and helping people say, okay, you have $150 left over from FY82 and $135 left over from FY83, and you would carry it over. Well, that all ended at about 1990. During that recession that happened at that point in time, and you had to spend the money or you lost it. And that's been the policy over the last 30 years. Well, we were fortunate that the administration listened, and they have reversed that policy. So now you have the ability to carry money over from one fiscal year into the next. May I suggest that you spend that money immediately in the new fiscal year and not carry over and have a string of carryovers year to year. But again, this is something the Executive Office of Elder Affairs and the folks on the 11th floor listened, and they have put that new protocol in place for now. I appreciate it. It's something else to be grateful for, something else to send a thank you note for. Now, in terms of the SIG funding, we have always had a process where we have a goals and objectives, and if you go to the NCOA online, you will see our under About Us on that line, you can go down and see the goals and objectives that we normally do on a 5-year cycle. That cycle is due to come up this January, though at this point in time, we're going to push that out another year, given that COVID needs to be our priority and managing activities and programs and support services and training and technical assistant needs to be focused on the COVID days. But at this point in time, those goals and objectives are published there. You can read them. You then went, with the help of Mary Kay Brown, and over a 2-year period, developed what you called the action plan, what we call the action plan, which, to be candid, was a wish list of about 62 activities that you wanted to see on the local level. We have then taken advice from The legislature, through our commissions like the Malnutrition Commission, the Elder Economic Security Commission, the Fault Prevention Commission, we've taken our advice from the Governor's Council, we've taken advice from the administration and the many different agencies and departments we work with, and we put together a use of SIG funding for each year. This year we've advanced a proposal that we are still negotiating with Elder Affairs. I remind you that we really didn't know that we were going to get full funding in the SIG program until about 2 weeks ago. So we have put together a program. We had everything in place to put something forward, but we don't even have a final budget yet because the conference committee is the stage we're at now. We're assuming that they will agree with what they both propose, so there's nothing really to reconcile there. And then it goes to the governor, and the governor has a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that the budget is balanced. It is in the Constitution of the state. We need to follow through that we have to have a balanced budget. So we will then see if that money holds. Once that money is held, we hope that we can get then approval to move forward on some of these initiatives that we've talked about. But again, those initiatives came from the goals and objectives, came from the action plan, came from the input of all of you, came from the input from the legislature and the administration. And we try to put through some creative ideas to tackle some of the more difficult issues around isolation, which we'll be talking about in a little while, some of our concerns around respite, some of our concerns around nutrition, some of the issues around transportation, resiliency, dementia-friendly Massachusetts. So we put a package together and we will let you know once that happens. But I would stay tuned. I am hopeful that a final proposal will be in place, and there could be some room for innovative programming developed and handled locally when we issue an RFP. So over the next 3 weeks, 4 weeks, I want you to pay attention to alerts that will be coming from our office about some potential funding opportunities. Remember, these funding opportunities are 6 months because they have to finish by June 30th. This cannot carry over. So think of those short-term projects within those areas that we've defined as potential for funding that may be approved that we could move forward on. So having said that, I wish that the funding could be for a whole year, but it's not a fault of anybody. It's the fault of COVID that we are late to the game on this and developing this RFP. And we will move as fast as we possibly can to get this RFP out to you, but it will be in a shorter window to implement than we've had in the past. So I want you just to be aware of that particular piece of it. I now want to turn it over to my good friend, Carol, who's been my partner in crime through all this particular piece of it, to add to that, to augment to that, and to give greetings from the Secretary. Carol?
Thank you, David, and it's a pleasure to be here again. I wish I could see you all. It's been a long time, and I want to first shout out to so many of you who reached out to me over the last few months while I was out on my leave, and it meant the world to me. And there's nothing better for recovery than getting those nice thoughts and notes. So very, very grateful for all of you and your continued work for sure. I just want to reiterate what David has shared regarding the budget. It is such a strange year in the sense of timing, but we are here. There is, hope that funding will prevail in terms of the service incentive grant, and we will work together very closely with MCOA and all of you to get those funds out the door as soon as they are made available, as soon as the governor reviews the budget, once he receives it from the legislature, and we'll move from there. Same applies to the formula grant. There will be communication going out once that is all settled as well. But I would agree that 3 years in a row is pretty darn good. And so glad and grateful that our older adults continue to be remembered and is a focus within the administration and across our network. I also just want to remind folks that Emmett has officially retired, and we surely miss his smiling face. I have been able to talk with him a number of times, and he is doing well, and that he is not forgotten for sure. And perhaps he will re-engage with us at some point when he gets really tired of being in retirement. We'll see. But with that said, in the meantime, please continue to share any inquiries or reach out directly to Adam Frank. Adam is on the call today. Adam has been working very, very closely with Emmett and myself and all those other folks at EOEA that you work with on all things councils on aging. So please feel comfortable reaching out to Adam if you have questions about the formula grant or service incentive grant, or you have questions about spending or whatever the question may be. Do not hesitate. You also may reach out to me directly as well. I have provided my contact information as well as contact information for Adam directly to Betsy, so I'm sure she'll get that out to you. Never hesitate. The other item I just wanted to touch base on, Betsy mentioned it and David as well. Social isolation obviously is really top of mind these days, and you can't, tap into social media or check in on the news or your local newspaper or just in conversations throughout your work without hearing what this pandemic and the impact it has had on many, particularly older adults and folks who don't have anyone in their life who is looking out for them, who may have the Council on Aging doing just that. And it's a lot of work, and it's very, very difficult to reach out to these folks to make sure they're okay, to touch base with them. And this is a time when we have to learn how to be creative to do that, to build up trust with folks so that they can accept the kindness that you have and that you are concerned. And we want to make sure that we all can continue to age well and safely with hope in our hearts as we get through this very, very difficult time. In relation to that social isolation, we are grappling with that at Elder Affairs as well and across the entire network. I know every one of us is very hungry and thirsty for information on creative programming in that area and how we can tap into each other's space and best practices and hopefully apply them in our own communities. So I wanted to introduce to you all Lynn Feldman, who's from LifePath. Is this a good time to introduce Lynn?
Go for it.
Are you sure? Do you have something else? No, seriously. We're good?
Go for it, Carol.
Keep going. Okay, sorry about that. So I'm going to ask Lynn to join us. And Lynn and I had a terrific conversation a couple of weeks ago around social isolation, what she's doing at LifePath. And I thought that this was a great opportunity for her to share that with you, and another way for us to all get to know one another and find out what other communities are doing, checking in with your own local ASAPs and other community agencies and see where we can work together around this topic. So with that, I'm going to introduce Lynn Feldman, Director of Community Services with LifePath.
Hi, everyone, and thanks so much, Carol, for the great introduction and for including me today. Thanks to David and Betsy for hosting the meeting. It's great to be here. So as Carol said, I'm Lynn Feldman. I'm Director of Community Services at LifePath, which is the Area Agency on Aging and Aging Services access point for Franklin County in the North Quabbin. We're a very rural area in the northern, central, and western part of Massachusetts. And LifePath also covers, has some services in Berkshire, Hampshire, Hampden, and Worcester counties as well. Social isolation is a problem we've all observed for a long time. In fact, it was the theme of Mass Council on Aging's annual dinner in 2017, where Dr. Caitlin Coyle of the Gerontology Institute at UMass Boston provided the keynote on this issue, and her remarks really made a big impact on me. Those of you who are on this call may remember that as well, around the need, the difficulty of social isolation, but also what we are already doing in our network to help. So I'm going to refer to Dr. Coyle's research and her colleagues' work during this talk a little bit. We also know that COVID has made social isolation worse. So some observations we at LifePath have made about programs that address social isolation. We know that we're already working on many proven solutions. Sometimes we have to take what I think of as a stigma avoidance route, as in offering programs that have social connection as a side benefit rather than the main benefit. This makes it easier for people to sort of step forward. We know that interventions can sometimes be labor intensive, but there are new resources and new willing volunteers, and I'll talk a little bit about that today. We know that technology is in some ways dividing us, and in other ways it's bringing us together. So how can we leverage on the latter and use it to bring people together and solve the technology gap? And also that there are some real COVID silver linings, and I'd like to wrap up my remarks with those silver linings, and you probably have a few of those in your mind as well. So as I go through my remarks, I'm going to ask you to do a couple of short exercises around social isolation programs to try to make this as helpful a discussion as possible, to make this useful time for you in terms of actually working on some programs in your center or your council. So please just grab a paper and pen to be ready for that. And also share a couple stories of impact from our organization that have been really meaningful to our staff and volunteers working on this tough problem. So Dr. Coyle and her colleagues at UMass and many others have shown that isolation and loneliness has potentially serious negative impacts. We have all seen this firsthand in our work, and we know this. So I'm going to get right to talking about the direct programs, which of course is the business that we are all in. I'm going to ask you to do a short activity with me. I'm going to read an incomplete list of solutions that was presented by Dr. Coyle and her colleagues in her report on social isolation. And what I'm going to ask you to do is just every time I read a solution, make a quick tick mark on your paper for every one of these solutions that you're already doing in one way, shape, or form at your counselor center. And also write down one that you think could be a good fit for your community with the right resources. And we'll talk a little bit more about resources later. So again, your job is just make a tick mark for every one of these solutions that you're doing and write down one that might be a good fit that you're not currently doing. So here goes. Volunteer drivers or van programs, fall prevention programs, chronic disease self-management, exercise programs, meals programs, support groups, creative or artful aging, shine, lifelong learning, aging mastery, telephone reassurance, friendly visiting, or access such as direct outreach or technology training. So my guess is that many of you have at least one tick mark, and many of you probably have several or many of these ticked off on your sheet. So just reflect for a quick moment and take a little bit of pride in being part of the solution already. And make sure to share your work in the community with others around social isolation. So we'll come back to the notes you made about your idea for a program in a couple of minutes. I'm going to talk about a few examples of programs in our area, which is what Carol had asked me to do, that have been developed or modified specifically for the loneliness threat caused by COVID-19. So an 82-year-old Athol resident called us in search of companionship. She told us that because of COVID, her usual activities such as shopping and visiting the senior center and visiting with friends and family had basically stopped. She doesn't see anybody. So we looked to some of our direct one-on-one companionship and support programs. For example, our Phone Pals program. We made her a match in the Phone Pals, and after a time, she said, "My phone pal is a hoot. We have a lot in common." Another 61-year-old woman called with the same issue, and we matched her with a volunteer who said, quote, "My phone pal and I have developed a wonderful relationship over the past few months. Each Friday, we connect to share experiences of the week for about 35 minutes. My phone pal lives alone and only leaves the house to take her cat to the vet and an occasional trip to CVS. With no TV, she uses her computer constantly for virtual exercise, line dancing, virtual tours, meetings, and lectures. She has gotten me hooked on girl travel tours, a great way to see the world. She is truly interested in me and a delight to chat with. I am so happy to be part of this program," unquote. So in this case, It seems our Phone Pals program appears to be helping the volunteer as much as the consumer. And we found that to be the case in a few cases. So Athol Senior Center, directed by Kathy Savoy, is also starting such a program with a grant from the Parmenter Foundation. So we have a few of these Phone Pals programs happening. And we also made a partnership with a group called the Consortium, which is a group of Harvard students that pairs college students, Harvard students, with elders around Massachusetts based on common interests. And they are open to new partnerships. All you have to do is refer older people, and they do the rest in terms of the screening and the matching. So that's also a nice option available to us in the Aging Network. LifePath, of course, is doing regular wellness calls from case managers, home delivered meal staff who would normally be visiting. So we've redirected those resources to supporting social needs. The benefits of these sort of one-on-one support programs are that it's a direct phone connection. It's fairly low in terms of administrative effort and coordination. You do have to recruit, train, support, supervise volunteers. For many of us, we're very used to that. And sometimes those relationships can really flourish without a lot of hands-on support. The challenge is people really have to self-identify for this, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in a minute. We also have support social group type sessions. So we have 2 virtual support programs for caregivers. We have an LGBTIQA group that meets weekly to provide socialization. And again, these are easy to kind of get going once they're going. They don't need a lot of oversight. And engagement and group membership can be extremely beneficial for folks who find a good fit. But again, it's a self-selected group. And in this case, technology barriers also may exist because some of these are happening via Zoom and the like. And if someone needs more than just a sort of a casual social connection, general support, we have an elder mental health outreach team funded by MCOA that provides phone or socially distanced home counseling visits for people having mental health problems. And we have an enhanced wellness program that offers one-to-one support from a trained volunteer for 6 months for goal setting and navigating challenges related to behavior change. And of course, there's a big social benefit there. We also provided an emergency COVID grant to North Quabbin Citizens Advocacy, which provides one-on-one direct advocacy and support services to elders. Now, with the programs that I've mentioned so far, with these programs, you've met the social needs of those who called you and said, I have a social need, but most people don't do that. We know that the people who do call you and say this are just the tip of the iceberg, and that's where the really creative work begins. And we need to turn to programs that offer socialization more as a side benefit than as a primary benefit, or sort of not advertised as such. So here's a couple examples of what I mean by that. So learning sessions. So these would be sessions where people would make connections and relieve loneliness in addition to benefiting from whatever learning material you're presenting. So for example, in Bernardston, in our area, a woman with diabetes noticed that her blood sugar had been creeping up since COVID began. So when the Enhanced Fitness program went online at the Bernardston Senior Center, she enrolled. And her exercises did help to lower her blood sugar and lower her medication. But when asked about her response to the program, she said, I can't go outside, so this helps me stay connected to people. So that was where the impact felt really most strong to her. And also, although it wasn't created specifically to target isolation, it felt like a school reunion, according to Senior Center Director Haley Bolton. Other examples, the Irving Senior Center, directed by Paula Betters, a Zoom knitting group. People come to knit, also to socialize. And in Northfield, at the Senior Center, directed by Rebecca Summer Peterson, a virtual adventure travel events through the Senior Living Network. Again, bringing people together with the socialization as a side benefit. Healthy living. All evidence-based programs through LifePath are now online or by phone. Chronic disease self-management, pain, diabetes, matter of balance. And according to one participant in a healthy living program, it was a chance to meet new people and connect with them because we were all there for the same reason. It was a time when we could not only learn how to manage our symptoms and how to take better care of ourselves, but also a time just for us, which was really needed in this chaotic world. Other examples of programs where socialization or social support is a side benefit are the volunteer services programs run by many of the senior centers and the aging services access points. So where people make connections and relieve loneliness in addition to benefiting from that service. So the services might include transportation. LifePath has an escorted transportation program that is currently up and running. We've been up and running right through the summer, and helping people get to the appointments that can't be held remotely. And in volunteer consumer pairs develop strong bonds. Same with money management, Shine, and Meals on Wheels. Again, many of the consumers served are isolated, and their regular volunteers provide that lifeline to connection and often a kind of friendship. So this discussion really would not be complete in 2020 without a mention of technology. Recently, the Massachusetts Healthy Aging Collaborative offered a webinar called The Digital Divide, and you can find that on their website to view. They identified 3 challenge areas around using technology to support socialization and relieving loneliness. So one is that people have to have access to devices and connectivity. 2 is they have to perceive that they can do it and that it is worthwhile. And 3 is people have to know how to tap into social opportunities safely online. Once you have all 3 of those things together, then you have a potentially successful support for social needs. So to try and tackle these, we at LifePath developed a direct technology program. This program provides a laptop, a tablet, or a smartphone, depending on the person's need, connectivity, as well as setup and training to those requesting help. And the setup and training is conducted by volunteers. So the benefits of this obviously directly solves that issue of I don't have a computer, I don't know the first thing about getting connected. As long as someone has that kernel of interest and perceives the value, they can benefit from this program. Also, this potentially supports the strong social relationships like family and close friends, which we know are a little bit different and maybe more important to health and well-being than what we think of as the weaker ties, this weaker social relationships, casual friends. For example, one participant in our technology program, he just wanted an iPad to be able to video chat with his grandchildren. His grandchildren, he was very close with, they lived nearby, but they were limiting their visits due to COVID, and the volunteer was able to provide the iPad, train the consumer on how to use Skype to video chat with his family. So that was a win in that program. Challenges, maintaining funding and training during COVID can also be tricky. To have that hands-on training has been one of the main challenges of the program. We've overcome that through doing some outdoor visiting, social distancing, and doing work over the telephone and Zoom when possible. LifePath also made an emergency COVID grant with CARES funds to Northfield Senior Center to support the same type of work. But some people are still not able to take advantage for many reasons. If they don't have that kernel of interest or belief that there's value there, we still have other ways of connecting with people. And some people are not able to take advantage for health, cognitive reasons, many reasons why that might not be appropriate for someone. And so we, of course, are still doing paper and mailing. The Irving Senior Center is sending out personal birthday cards, thinking of you cards, holiday cards, and they're doing drawings for care baskets. LifePath made a CARES Act funds grant to Bernardston Senior Center to do a printed newsletter to keep people engaged, even though it's one-way information, it's still social support. We are distributing cards through Meals on Wheels America to Meals on Wheels recipients, and we're also organizing a card shower for local nursing home residents who have been, just devastatingly impacted by this terrible COVID crisis. So those are, just some direct program examples, direct supports that we are doing up here in Franklin County and North Quabbin. You probably have many others that you're doing in your communities. And I just want to make a quick mention of longer term system policy type changes and encourage everyone to join your local age-friendly communities effort. This was also cited by Dr. Coyle as very important, as social participation is one of the 8 domains of age-friendly communities. And if we all work together to make our state and our communities more age-friendly, then down the road, many of these tasks become easier and the need will be reduced is the outcome goal of those programs. So let's not forget about those pieces as well. And just a quick note too about resources. So you may be wondering how we are accomplishing all of this in this environment. So I just wanted to talk a little bit about that. We have done this with existing resources, except for we did hire one full-time equivalent, one person with the CARES Act funds, and we also have a part-time program manager we pulled in with local foundation funds. We also had a wave of new volunteers. So early in the COVID crisis, I put out a Google form out on Facebook, and that got picked up by a few community organizations, and eventually we had over 125 new people ready to help. And that's a lot for our rural community. So we've used the new volunteers to build outreach and program capacity. And then we also tried to reassign staff early in the pandemic. For example, those who used to do home visits are now doing phone check-ins. So, about resources, consider checking in with your local community foundation, area agency on aging, or other supports to ask who has volunteers, who has grant money or supplies or other supports that you might use to enhance or develop new social isolation interventions. And I also just want to mention too, a quick note about accessibility. So according to a recent article from the American Society on Aging called Effective Solutions for Social Isolation and Loneliness, they are saying that interventions should be accessible to a range of physical and cognitive abilities, potential sensory impairments, economic backgrounds, and literacy levels. So I just kind of wanted to leave that there, as we know that the abilities of the people that we serve vary widely. So thank you so much for your attention. I'm going to do a quick exercise, and then we're going to wrap up this talk about social isolation. So I want you to think back now to the earlier exercise where you wrote down one solution or activity that could help with isolation in your community. I want you to take 1 to 2 minutes now and write down a couple of things. So take that concept, write 1 or 2 sentences about how this could be accomplished, be it an enhancement to an existing program or a new program, and then make a list of those resources that would be needed. So staff, volunteers, cash, etc. And any challenges or obstacles you can foresee, might exist. And then if time allows in this short writing exercise that we're going to do, begin to fill in how to access those resources. So again, your charge is to write down your concept, write down a list of resources you would need, and begin to try and solve for those resources to the extent that time allows. So I'm going to give 1 to 2 minutes at this point. You're just going to hear silence while everyone does this little writing exercise, and then we'll come back together. Okay, thank you for your willingness to participate in that activity, and I hope that that sparks an idea for you and gets you started on your way to thinking about potentially expanding or developing new social isolation resources. A quick note about impact. You're going to want to document positive outcomes, but you're probably not going to be able to measure change in social isolation and loneliness, but you can measure things like number of new friendships that were forged, occurrence of feelings of belonging or inclusion, or strengthened sense of community. So whenever you're developing a satisfaction survey, be sure to include at least 1 or 2 outcomes type questions to really get at the impact of your program, so you can talk about that in the community and to potential funders. I mentioned before there are some silver linings. I want to talk just very briefly about this on a positive note. Interventions like this can be labor intensive, having people make phone calls, spend time on the phone with people, be doing mailings, organizing programs. But there are new volunteers in this new pandemic. There are new people who want to help, and staff can be reassigned. Can we tap into this COVID compassion in a new way? Are there new audiences? Are there people who wouldn't have come to the senior center? Are they now willing to join a Zoom or pick up a grab and go meal? How can we continue to engage these new audiences that have come to us because of the pandemic? Is transportation less of a barrier than it once was? Can we do more or better frequent meetings if we use Zoom or GoToMeeting and forego transportation refreshments and all the other work that we used to put into having meetings? Just some potential silver linings to think about. And some key takeaways. Social isolation, we've observed it for a long time. COVID has made it worse. We are already working on many proven solutions, and new resources and advancements in learning, broader imagination may make it possible for us to be doing more. And I encourage everybody to think about that. As a parting exercise and a little bit of homework for you, I know I've already asked a lot of you during this talk, but as a parting exercise, I would like to ask you to please, sometime in the next week, to look up UMass Boston Gerontology Institute's report called It's the Little Things, a community resource for strengthening social connections. This is a great practical resource and covers a lot of the territory that I covered today in a different format, and more examples and ideas for community-based solutions can be found there. I'm going to share links to these materials and some of the other resources I talked about with Betsy, and so she can share those with you. Thank you so much for including me in this discussion, for your kind attention today. Thank you so much to everyone working on this really difficult and important issue, all the councils on aging out there and other organizations. You're appreciated, and I thank you again for inviting me to this important topic, to talk about this important topic today. Much appreciated.
Lynn, you were extraordinary as usual. Thank you for a fabulous presentation. I really appreciate you beginning to have us focus again, to help us refocus again on this issue of socialization and isolation that's happening. There's a task force from AARP that is up and running that we are participating in as well. So there's a lot of things around the state that are happening in this area. This is taking with or without COVID. We know that this was a problem pre-COVID. We know that COVID has exacerbated it. So we as a network had put this on our radar screen, on our goals and objectives, on our action plan, to begin thinking about ways that we as a senior center could augment our existing services to improve the quality of life of older adults in our Commonwealth. I think some of the exercise that Lynn put us through, I thought was very good, because many times we do activities and we don't link them to possible solution under this particular rubric. We don't put that lens on. Is this also having a byproduct to help out those folks that might be isolated and lonely? So again, I appreciate all that Lynn has framed for us, and it does segue into the next portion of what could be happening as we as MCOA look for funding opportunities to present you folk on the front lines to try some of these different projects. So again, stay tuned. We'll be looking for opportunities to share with you and to make available to you as we move forward. One of the things that we did want to bring up, and we have a couple other topics before we conclude today, is first of all, I'm looking at his face with his mustache there. Adam, welcome. We haven't formally welcomed you to the network. I've known Adam for years and years and years, so I'm really glad he's playing with us now. We appreciate his opportunity to join us, and wasn't sure if you had anything you wanted to say at this point in time.
Nothing official. I'm just I'm just loving my job. I'm going through the annual reports and seeing how all of the councils on aging have done their regular work up through March and how they've reacted since. And it's just great to be part of this. Thanks for having me.
Adam, how long have you been at Elder Affairs?
12 years.
And you've been shadowing Emmett for the last year or two in terms of helping and understanding. He's been a fixture at our fall conferences. He has been helpful with this last one that we just had. So again, we welcome and embrace Adam as one of ours and one of us, and who will be there for your technical assistance. So please, Carol has always been there for us, but we welcome Adam to joining our team as we try to deal with issues and reach out to the 1.7 million older adults in our Commonwealth. One of the things that happened since the conference that some of you are aware of, that we are beginning to figure out ways that we can provide solutions, is we had a devastating fire at one of our senior centers. And I want to turn this over to Becky, our president, who at one point was co-chair of our charity campaign, where we raised money for those communities that were devastated by the tornadoes that came through Western Mass here. But she has an idea that she wants to share with you all now. Becky, please address us.
Thanks, Dave. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of very busy schedules to be on this call today. I appreciate and continue to commend you for all of the amazing and essential work that you're doing across the Commonwealth. So thank you, thank you, thank you. I have a very special shout out to those of you who are also Shine counselors. I am a Shine counselor, and you're almost there. It's almost over. Open enrollment will end on Monday, and we can celebrate that day with great gusto. But hang in there. It's almost there. So as Dave mentioned, unfortunately, the community of Rehoboth suffered a terrible loss of their senior center. It was destroyed by a fire in September, and Terry Marciello and I decided to reinvigorate the MCOA charity campaign. You may have seen this come up in some of the MCOA briefs that have come out. But what we are trying to do as a network is to raise funds for the Rehoboth senior community. This is a way to show Rehoboth that we are 100% behind them, next to them, and will help them in whatever way we possibly can to get through this terrible tragedy. So donations can be sent to MCOA, to Sherry Cox's attention. Checks made out to MCOA with charity campaign in the memo line. In addition, currently there is a fundraiser going on through the Purple Umbrella, which some of you may remember. Purple Umbrella was a group that came to our conference for many, many years and sells jewelry. And so what they have done is that they have offered that anyone who makes a purchase through Purple Umbrella, 20% of your purchase will go to the Rehoboth charity campaign. So thank you for listening to all of that and for your generosity when you're considering making any donations. We certainly do appreciate that. And our hearts and minds are certainly continue to be with Rehoboth. Back to you, Dave.
Okay, again, we're asking on two different levels. We're looking for the personal pledge. I've written my check and have submitted it to help out, because I think this is a valuable charity. We all know what would happen if our senior center wasn't there tomorrow. And then it is something, as a former president of our Friends group, that I would consider or put before our Friends group to see if they would be interested in making some type of a donation, because this is really tragic. And as much as you think insurance covers things, it doesn't. And there are things that need to be built back better at the Rehoboth Senior Center. So we hope that you take this seriously, that you make a commitment and join this charity campaign, because we really feel that if we all do good works, it does come around to help us out, because there before the grace, it could be I. So I just want to put that out there for everybody and reinforce Becky and Terry's energy on this and hope that you'll make contributions. We are two things that I do want to bring up, and again, pay attention. My commercial, hopefully we'll be able to have some opportunities come forward, but there is fatigue out there. And fatigue has led to frustration and raw emotions, and I want to just recognize that. We have all worked together as a team, whether it's within our own councils on aging, with our own staffs, with our ASAPs, with elder affairs, public health. We've always been a team working towards serving now 1.7 million older adults. At some point, we're going to need to move past some of the anxiety that was expressed, some of the issues that have occurred over the last 9 months, as we begin to recognize that at the moment we are climbing Heartbreak Hill. The end is in sight. We know that possibly within 6 months, we will begin, and the word is begin, to start to deal with back to some type of normality. But we have a couple of major speed bumps, a couple of twists and turns as we roll out the vaccinations, as we continue to promote social distancing and mask wearing and washing hands. And we continue to be worried about folks that are isolated and not checking in with their doctors and not getting proper nutrition and don't having enough respite care. So as we begin to try to tackle all of these together, I want everybody just to breathe and focus on the glass as half full. We will get there. We will achieve what we need to achieve in the next 6 months, and then we will take a year, FY22, as we begin to build it back better. It has been a very difficult 9 months, and some of you are crisp. I in particular am crisp, and I offer a public but not informative apologies to Carol, Betsy, and Becky, because we need to move forward. And this is a very difficult time for all of us. We can't get together for the hugs and the glass of beer or whatever your choice is. But we have worked through so much as a team that we will get through this. And I just want to, again, end up with that positive note. Complicating it a little bit, but just to remind you all that the US Census is due to kick in FY22. Right now, according to UMass Donahue Institute, there are 450,000 more older adults coming our way, that will be counted or were counted on April 1st, 2020, that will now become into the formula grant itself. The budget is way too precarious at this moment in time to even begin to think about what that'll look like. But I have put the projections up on the website, or Lynn will be putting them up momentarily. They'll be able to show you what will look like if there is supplemental requests that are, if additional money can be added to the budget. Right now, our line item is $17 million. We would need to go to $23 million to maintain the $12 formula grant. What I have projected and put out on the chart is what it would look like at $12, which would be 23 million. If they had to drop it back to 21 million at $11, they have to drop it back to 19 million would give you a roughly $10 million, $10 per elder formula grant. And if they can put no additional money in, which would then be for the 4th year in a row, it would be level at 17, we would drop to $9 per elder. Your calculations change. Some of you have more population and can eat some of that. Some of you will be seeing significant projections. But as you begin to develop your municipal budgets, which many of you have already started, and as we begin to do our legislative request for FY22, which will be going to the governor sometime this month, and then will be going to the legislature at the beginning of the year. You can look at those projections. It will be under the advocacy tab. It should be the first thing. And you can see how that will directly impact you. Having been working as your executive director since 1994, this will be my third census in this job. It'll be my fifth census in the field, but my third census. And I can tell you emphatically, and if Emmett was here, he would share as well, that every time we've hit a new census, we've had to ratchet back the formula dollar allocation. So I'm anticipating that could happen. I hope that it doesn't go all the way back to $9. But there's no guarantees because COVID, the economy, are all still at play. Unemployment is at 7.5%, 8%, and we needed to get to 5% before we start to see any real new money coming into the Commonwealth. So hold your breath, stay tuned. But at this point in time, I'm optimistic, but I don't want to give you an unrealistic expectation of what this will look like as we move forward. So you can look at the chart and make those decisions. Again, Heartbreak Hill, hang in there. We will get through this. I want to turn it over now to Carol for final thoughts, and then you can kick it back to Betsy.
Thank you, David, and I apologize for earlier for jumping ahead of myself. This is what happens when you roll from meeting to meeting, you just keep going. And thank you to Lynn as well. It was a terrific presentation. I hope it was helpful for all. One of the things I am most grateful for and so pleased that we're jumping back into these meetings is I always pick up something new to check out, to review, to stay on top of, and I appreciate all the references to the good work that you're doing with the community conversations, as well as your continued goals and objectives that you have been supporting for the last few years, recognizing where we are in the COVID pandemic and that we're not out of it. That's for sure. There is definitely hope in sight, and we should be focusing on that and moving in that direction. But we still have a lot to do to care for those who we are thinking of every day, and the 1.7 million adults, older adults. I agree with sensing the fatigue. I feel it, we all feel it, and we need to continue to work together just to keep each other standing up. I am mindful of your references to the budget, and you are correct. That is true. Every time there is this change in the census or we have come through a difficult time, there's always concern or question about what will happen with the funding through the formula grant. We will pay very close attention to that. We will work with you and be sure to continue to support what is needed in that budget. As I said, I am most thankful and grateful that we have had an administration, continue to have an administration that supports older adults and recognizes the need and the funding responsibilities that go along with that. And again, thank you for welcoming Adam. And Adam has lots of experience actually in the aging space. Before coming to Elder Affairs, you were with the Alzheimer's Association, correct, Adam? And Adam has had the opportunity to work on a lot of initiatives within Elder Affairs around Alzheimer's disease, dementia-friendly, workforce issues, a whole host of things. So we are pleased that Adam is still with us. And I'm so glad he's still with me because I couldn't have gotten through this last year or these last few months without Adam's support and his willingness to always say, sure, always with a smile, always with ease, keeps me calm, and hopefully you will all experience that by working closely with Adam as well. So thank you again for having us, and I look forward to our next time when we are together.
Thanks so much, Carol. And I know we did have one question that came in prior to today's call, so don't want to skip over that. Which the question was: we were allowed to use remaining FY20 formula grant funds to support curbside pickup events involving food and other essential items to help our seniors. Will this still be allowed with the FY21 funding as well?
Thank you for the question, Betsy, and for reminding me. Yes, that would be. And just taking a note and a page from Rachel Goldstein when she spoke with us a couple of months ago about the issuance of the new formula grant policy and the expectation that communities will utilize those dollars and spend those dollars within the parameters of the law. It is up to you to be sure that you are accounting for and keeping track of how you are spending these dollars moving forward, as there is not that recap back to Elder Affairs at the end of the fiscal year. But with that said, that should not hold anyone back from weighing in with us and checking in with us. If you have a question about how to spend dollars and what's appropriate, what you are feeling a little squishy on, please pick up the phone and give us a call. We welcome that. It helps us learn about the struggles and the decisions you are making at the local level and where the needs are. And we want to be there for you. So please continue to do that, checking in with us as well.
Great. Thank you. Go ahead, David.
Again, Carol, if you could just thank Rachel and the Secretary and Secretary Sutters again for that. That was an extraordinary move. And it caught me by surprise, but it is very welcome within our network. And we thank you for making those decisions about allowing the rollover, but also allowing the use for it, given that it is a local aid line item. And we want to make sure we're using that money to best serve the older adults in our community. So thank you so much for that.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you.
Betsy, this is Lynn. I just want to get one quick thing in before you wrap up the meeting, if
Sure.
I could. So I need to issue a correction.
Okay.
So there's a group of Harvard students that's operating an intergenerational phone companionship program that some of the attendees today might want to look up, and they are actually called the Concordium. I will include a link to their website in the resource list that I send you, Betsy, but I think I mislabeled them as the consortium. So I just wanted to issue that little tiny correction before we let everyone go.
Okay, thank you so much, Lynn. We appreciate that. And Lynn is going to get us that information, and we will be posting it on our website. When we do that, we will be sending you all communication in regards to that in the MCOA brief. So please look for that. I just want to say I'm so amazed at how I continue to hear about how caring you are for each other and how you're lifting each other up. I want you to know that you're an inspiration. We draw from your strengths, and we know that you're going to continue to do that. And we wish everyone good health, and we'll have much more happiness in listen to me, FY, in calendar year 2021, right? But we're here if you need us, and we're here to be an ear. And please don't hesitate to reach out to us. And thank you again for being so inspiring to everyone with all the work that you're doing. And we think we'll be talking to you again in January. Don't have the date yet, but we're working on that. So please, everyone, have a great holiday season. Stay safe and continue to lift one another up. We appreciate you.
Healthy and happy holidays to everybody. Take care.
Take care. Bye.